Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and this is a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where the wait is almost over. Regardless if you're ready or not, the Irish League is about to kick off its campaign for the 2024-25 season, and it just so happens to be that this is your one-stop shop for what you need to get your head around before the start of another thrilling NIFL Premiership campaign. We're going to have every club covered from front to back. I'm talking transfers, managerial changes, European football. All you've got to do is sit back, relax, and enjoy this season opening episode of Kicking Match. Yes, we are back. We are here for the kickoff episode of the third, I can't believe it either, the third series of Kicking Match. It's the big one. And to join me in this organised ignorance that is this episode, it's great to welcome back. They're your favourites and mine as well, from around the grounds NI. First, it's great to welcome back to the pod, Joe McCallion.
Great to be back, Peter.
And his partner in crime and in vlogging and everything else in between, it's Ross Welsh.
I am so excited to be here, Peter.
Guys, it truly is the big one. It's the one which ultimately kicks off the season. It's the one I think everybody looks forward to. It's also the one where you put your necks on the line, because by agreeing to do this one means you're going to be welcome back come the end of this season, all going well, come April, and you're going to have to atone for your predictions and your sins. Do you feel comfortable with the assumptions that you're about to make?
Look, Peter, I made some shocking predictions last year and I still kept coming on, so I'm ready to do it all over again.
I think bad predictions are just our whole sort of thing at the minute, so good choice getting us on and making a fool of ourselves again.
Well, speak for yourselves, because as much as I have some dodgy parts to my copybook when it comes to my prediction record, I think I've got a few little diamonds in the rough along there as well. Let's see if we can find some of them as we go along, but we will unfortunately have to start this podcast on a bit of a bum note, because we've got to look back on some of the more recent happenings before we dive into my bowl here filled with teams like it is every other year. And that is, unfortunately, the football that has been played in a competitive sense by our Irish League teams, and that is European competitions. Fellas, I don't even think I want to look at a Latvian flag ever again, yet hear one of their teams. We spend all year hyping up these nip and tuck games between some of the best teams in our country, saying a win here could really benefit them. It could give them an edge in getting into Europe. This goal, this brass ring at the end of the season of Europe. And every single game that we had in that fixture round across the Champions League and the Conference League, it ended in heartbreak. I think disaster is a fair way to sum up our European ventures so far.
Yeah, absolutely horrendous set of results, especially when you think back and look when the draws initially came out. Apart from RFS, everybody's looking at those draws thinking, yep, we could all get through around here. And even to be fair, with the RFS draw, I think people were thinking, Linfield ran them close, so not out of the realms of possibility. But yeah, stinking set of results. Don't think any Irish League team scored away from home. And then no excuses really, because you can throw the summer football or the part-time football, and each of those camps have a representative that have beat our teams this year. So
that's a part of the heartbreaking bit about it. I did somewhat of a preview a couple of weeks ago saying what a brilliant draw this is. None of them are gimmies, but you would have bitten your hand off for that kind of draw months ago. And I think I put it at 2 out of the 4 fixtures. Like, that would be the marker on if they got through 2, it would be in a decent round, and anything below that would be disappointment. And we didn't get one of them. Like, Larne gets another bite of the cherry due to the Champions League and this Champions run, and they got an extra bit of luck by the fact that they've been able to skip one of the rounds in the Conference League. But every single team didn't do anything away from home. On goals, it ended 7-18. Not helped by that thumping from RFS across 2 legs for Larne. Some of the games were close, to be fair, but none of them really took the bull by the horns and took control of any of those games.
the thing that's really shocking about that Larne game is they're our team here that just don't concede goals.
Mhm.
So to see a team like Larne get thrashed 3-0 and 4-0 is almost like doesn't look good for the league. And it's quite worrying in terms of as you both say coming into this, there was a wee bit of hope in terms of there's potential here that we pick up a couple of results as a league.
Yeah.
But just didn't happen. For the coefficient, it's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, it feels like we're minnows now in the European stage. I know we've always been at the bottom end. These results, it's a blow. And how do we recover from this mentally? Because that's a big thing for me. It now puts us in a position where are we going to fear Europe next year?
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm a bit of a coefficient nerd, and I don't want to make this a whole numbers podcast. But the website I looked at went back to 1920, and this is our worst season in terms of coefficient by a long, long way.
Oh,
And we've just lost our second best score. The way it works every 3 years, and we're going to lose our best score next year. So we're back to sort of flirting with going back down to 3 teams in Europe, which is obviously no fun at all, especially because the European playoff, just good fun at the end of the year. But I really don't know where you go from here because, as we say, winnable games, and we've been shrinking violets as a league. So it's tough to know where to turn, especially with all the other teams making a bit of a run.
I'm asking this question by the back door, I know, but it has to be put out there as it's been a key part of the discourse. Based on the teams that we saw, at least our teams put out and the performances they put in July, is there any argument to say that they're anyway close or better than how these teams looked in February? Because I think the teams that they had from a personnel point of view and from just a fitness, structure, flow point of view, all of the versions of these teams in February would easily beat the teams in July, and you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, there's a summer football angle being played, and
Yeah,
I've been against it, but at this point it's starting to look maybe a bit more fair enough. But like Carnarvon Town, obviously I'm living over here this year. I've seen them a couple of times, and they're proper part time. They're not like a Crusaders part time. They are part time, and Crusaders just like miles off it. Like that's the Welsh league. You know what I mean? Like several leagues below us in the coefficient, and they just didn't even really lay a glove. It should never have went to penalties. I understand they got close, but my goodness, like you can't just go and lose 2-0 like that.
Across 135 minutes, Crusaders were being outworked, being outplayed. In fact, after 45 minutes in the first away leg, Crusaders were already trying to change it up. They looked completely off the pace, and that I think you could probably say is a bad result on its own. The games for Cliftonville and Larne against Latvian opposition is somewhat different. Like I think Crusaders at the wrong end of a shock, and they shot themselves in the foot as well by that great comeback near the end, and perhaps they should have pushed on and not even been in a position where it did go to penalties with that big comeback. Larne looked very rusty in the games against RFS, especially the first game, and then at times they looked off it from a fitness point of view and got outplayed by just far better players. That RFS team that we saw in 2024, far better in every way than what we saw in 2022. Cliftonville's the odd one, because the insight I got from, and I have one now, Latvian football contacts, they kind of thought that, Oda or Oda, they're middling and they're going against one of your better teams, and Cliftonville never felt as though they got out of gear. They just, and I know there's a lot of baggage to talk about how that Cliftonville team set up, and that's probably the argument about being a team that's trying to build their squad for the season compared to a team in February in Cliftonville that had all guns blazing and they had their best squad altogether. They just got caught flat-footed in those fixtures.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. Like going to the summer football point that you raised, I agree. For me, it definitely makes a difference as to whether or not you're playing football all the time or not. But we know we're not a summer football league, but we know how important these matches are. It baffled me that, well, from Cliftonville, I was keeping an eye on anyway, how it only felt like we were starting our pre-season when that match came up. For me, we should have started way earlier, especially with the players that we have lost and the ones that we have brought in. Those players need to gel. They need to work together. And that's, for me, what it looked like that night. It looked like the team hadn't quite bought into a plan that was there at the moment. There was obviously new players like Donnelly coming in. Not that it was at all his fault. He ran his socks off that night, but that's a different type of player than we've had. That's not like a rolling heel. So it was just in that first half, we started slow. It was nice to see that when we conceded, we got back up again and equalised. But in the second half, it was, I don't know whether it was fitness or just a drop of the heads, but it looked really, really poor.
Ross, what about your Blues? They also played against a Summer League opposition and playing against a team from the Icelandic League. They had it in their hands bringing that game to Windsor Park, and they let it slip through their fingers.
Yeah, that's turning into a bit of a familiar story for Linfield at the minute. Just going ahead or getting ourselves back into something and then throwing it away again. The away leg, we didn't really lay a glove on them. Obviously, Chris Shields hits the bar with a penalty. Could have made it 1-1, and you're talking about a different tie. But that's the fine margins that European games are decided upon. And obviously, Linfield know that better than anyone against RFS of all teams. But when you get yourself back level in the tie and at home, you gotta go forward and win it from there on. You can't be conceding sloppy enough goals, which is once again sort of the story of the back end of Linfield's season last year. And I just don't think it bodes particularly well for the season coming up.
And the impact of that from a pride point of view is not great as fans of the league, but I think David Healy summed up the financial impact that will have. He talked about the idea of him having plans, of transfer plans that now not progressing in Europe will have an effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously there's the argument to make there that clubs shouldn't be planning for European money that they haven't won yet. But I think when you look at those draws, it's fair enough to at least put a few grand away anyway. And yeah, it just looks like it's a stagnant Linfield team now. I'm sure we'll talk about them more later, but I think that European money really could have done a world of good. Like RFS, after they did beat us to the group stages, they've now got Latvian internationals, and they look a totally different team. It just shows the difference it can make.
We've talked a lot about in this podcast how we feel as though the Irish League is growing, it's progressing, it's trying to professionalise itself. Perhaps what we're forgetting in what we believe is our ascent is that other leagues are on a similar level, are potentially doing exactly the same thing, and we've got a fight on our hands to try and take something that we felt as though was going to be part and parcel of our growth progression in Europe. We took that for granted, that we thought if we go full time, eventually it's all come together. And that's probably maybe the argument what some people will say who will disagree with any feelings that summer football will be an aid in this, that you took the Cliftonville team for an example. Would it really matter if Cliftonville were in the middle of their season? Would that stop the likes of Ross County coming in for Hale? It would probably stop the players coming out of contract like Ashford and Wilson, but perhaps those players would even come to the league if they were playing on alternative months. So there's two sides to every coin, of course, for this. And Larne do have that second bite, as we talked about. They have a game against the team that they lost to last year, a team that they got a bit of a spanking to last year, and what they've got is a second chance. It's hard to really tell how they'll square up to that. This game against them across the next 2 weeks is going to take out their opening fixture in the league. But despite them not looking great in the first half, in the first game, they came to their senses a bit in the second half of that first leg against RFS, and they looked like they were pushing forward against RFS in the first half before they get their goal. That sucker punch kind of knocked them out of the tie and their heads dropped. If you're Larne, you got to play with no fear, surely, now across these ties. Go for it. Try and be a bit more streetwise to it, but you've played an intense, tough team. Give it a go. They're not out of it yet.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, as we say, they've had that sort of wee bit more experience now of a competitive game. They'll have a few more games under their belt, and what is there to lose at this point? You're absolutely correct. Just absolutely go for it. One thing that they will be worrying seeing is obviously that league bonus news as to whether or not he'll be there or not. But if he is, they need to just absolutely go for it and walk out with their heads held high.
Let's get down to the meat and potatoes of this season preview. I've got all 12 teams in front of me in paper form. I'll pick them out randomly and we'll spend a bit of time talking about how their summers went, their hopes, their ambitions, their dreams, and we'll give, if you like it or not, some of our thoughts and feelings on how they're going to go this season. Going into this year, I look at it from 1 to 12 and I think arguably this could be the strongest league from top to bottom we've ever seen, from the quality of players and teams. And I doubt there's going to be a huge uplift on teams that will be in the bottom six into the top six. Maybe you have different feelings to that, but you got to say, particularly picking a team to be relegated was one of the more difficult tasks. And I think we could see a lot of close games, a lot more competitive games compared to what we've maybe seen in previous years.
When I was trying to pick my predictions, honestly, from about 5th, the 8th kept changing, and then the bottom again kept changing constantly. Even what I have now, I'm not settled with. So I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, difficult enough. There's a stretch from about 5th to 11th where, within reason, if you put a team in any of those positions, I think you can fairly argue for it. Maybe not 5th into 11th, but it's a real pick 'em when it gets in around there. And even your top three, choose your order, or maybe not the top three that we had this year. Who knows? We'll see.
Who knows? Let's find out if anybody of you guys listening there agree with our thoughts and opinions, and we'll get this rolling here. We'll pick our first team out, and it is going to do a bit of a rustle here to kind of give more feeling to the listeners. And we're starting off with Linfield. So the Blues come into this season off the back of disappointment on missing out in the title of Larne, bit of a frustrating European campaign. There's been a couple of questions from the fans about the back line due to some key departures, and there's been a push from fans to get a bit more investment in the attacking side. Hold on, sorry, that's last year's script. So Linfield go into this summer very similar to last year. They're going to try and take the Gibson Cup away from Larne. There's a feeling from the fans that they would like some extra bit of spending in areas of the team. It hasn't come wholesale so far. They've sold off a lot of great young players. They haven't seen that invested into the team. Why is there this somewhat downbeat feeling? They're not kind of up and at 'em feeling we're ready to take on this Larne team. Is it because of what other teams have done this summer, or is it because of the lack of activity that Linfield have made?
I'm personally not up for a challenge with Larne because I don't think we'll be anywhere near it. I think we are standing still, and obviously standing still means going backwards, really. And I don't even think Larne and Cliftonville have strengthened. We are just stuck in one place. Ian Doherty, Braden Graham, they haven't went over for free. So there's money there, and I would just love to know where it's going, because it's not on a new centre forward, which I would love.
It's a full-time setup. There's plenty of great players. You look at that team and you can say that most of them would walk into a majority of the other teams in the league. There's a nice base of young players. You got a chance to get their feet under the table last year. They'll be expected to take a further step up. There's been some players that have been injured for a time that could come back in. The exodus hasn't been massive. And on the whole, the players that they've lost, the likes of Finlayson, in comes Roscoe. You know, they bring in players to try and fill those holes. And Linfield season, as much as there was a bit of down feeling on the season, they got 85 points last year. I think 8 or 7 of the last 10 seasons, that would have won you the league. So they improved on the points, didn't topple Larne. I think that says a lot about how good Larne was. But what's the issue with this Linfield team? Is it just a feeling that the squad that's there can't get over the line and needs to be changed? Is there a feeling that they just need more goals, maybe more reinforcements at the back? Where's the weakness, Ross?
I need to preface everything I say I would like David Healy to remain as the Linfield manager as we speak. So anybody who fancies it on Twitter, stop. So that's my first thoughts. But the way he picked the team last year it's not the way I'd have picked the team. It's not the way a lot of Linfield fans would have picked the team. I think you say about Sam Roscoe replaces Daniel Finlayson. Sam Roscoe should have come in as well as having Daniel Finlayson there, because we were left very short at centre half last year. He's coming back obviously from injury, that'll be good. But I would have liked another one in there. Obviously Scott Whiteside, good centre half. Sounds arrogant, is he a Linfield player coming from a nearly relegated Ballymena? It's just, I think what comes into a lot is the split last year. We 1-1 and we drew the other 4. Then we lost the cup final. The whole place is just on a bit of a low ebb at the minute, and it's carried through. And obviously, beat Ballymena on opening day handily, and then go on a bit of a run, everything changes. But at the minute, it's bleak.
I did a bit of research. What does this team mean to you? What is it? What comes to mind when I say Johns, Finlayson, Roscoe, Ben Hall, Clark, Mulgrew, Shields, McLean, Miller, Robbie McDade, and Stephen Fallon? What's that team?
Well, it's a good team. I would say it's maybe season before last.
The team that started against RFS in the second leg.
Yeah.
And a lot of that team is there. So a lot of the team that had just won the title the season before was there, almost got into Europe. There's players that have suffered a bit of injuries, some that have moved on, but from Roscoe, Shields, McLean, Mulgrew, Miller, they're all there. McDade could come back. In fact, some would say with McKee and with Fitzpatrick that you're stronger in that department. You don't have Cooper in that team. So you had some difficult injuries in there, and overall consistency was great. And perhaps you've got to look at it from a point of view that you came up against this behemoth that was Larne with their incredible 90 points that they got. And is there just a feeling within Linfield that if it ain't the title, it ain't nothing, and you just haven't got like this lottery ticket, this spark that you feel this is the player that's going to change our fortunes?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an aspect of at Linfield, if you don't win the league, then you might as well not have bothered for a year. And all those players you name, they're all 2 or 3 years older since then, and they're all on the wane. Sort of Chris Shields getting old, Kirk Miller, Joel Cooper not getting any younger. It's just the fact that is the same team is the problem. Where's the new signings to come in and blow things up and go for it? People thought it was maybe going to be Fitzpatrick last year. That didn't really work for him. Chris McKee on the edges didn't really get much of a chance. And then, if it weren't for Clark and Finlayson running down their contracts, that would be the back 4 again. And that when you're trying to win league titles, that is the last thing you can do. You can't just sit and let Larne pull away and let Cliftonville catch up and let Glentoran give it another go. God bless them. But it's just, you can't just stay stagnant. And I think that's the whole Linfield fan-based problem at the minute. The board have just let it all go a bit dull.
Is there a player in the league right now that you would sit there and go, I would love to plug, let's take Larne out of the equation, that you'd love to take out from another team and plug them into the Linfield team, like the great Linfield teams of old that just were able to go after the player that they loved and liked and stick them in, and they would be attractive to the player? Is there one that's currently in the league that you would want? Because it feels like other teams, like Cliftonville success with the likes of Ashford and Wilson, they came from external additions that I still get that feeling of, oh my goodness, they're just lottery tickets. They're good and they're bad. There's a wide variety of outcomes there. And I think we're seeing a lot more of these players from lower leagues of Scotland, maybe a player from the lower leagues in England. Youth players comes from the big academies that are dropping down, looking to restart their career in the Irish League. So knowing that they are a mystery box that you can't pick out, is there a player in this league that you go, I would love them to be at Linfield, and I think they would get the fans really excited to see them playing week in and week out in a blue shirt?
So we need to start getting a bit of a succession plan. So a Benji McGee to come in for Kirk Miller, someone like that. And what you say about the Linfield of old used to just go and buy a player. When's the last time Linfield beat another team to a player? Yeah, I remember Davy McDade a good few years ago, to be fair, picked Larne over Linfield. Ronan Hale picked Larne over Linfield at one point. There was a bit of a tussle for Fitzpatrick last year, managed to get on top of that. Hasn't really worked, that's okay. But Linfield are still operating in that same way where almost in like a Bayern Munich style, we'll pick the best players from other teams. Whereas what you say, with this full-time model, you kind of have to go outside of the scope and go either down south or, as you say, into the Scottish lower leagues and try to find gems there instead of just saying, oh, Scott Whiteside played well against us, he's Ballymena's best player, we'll have a bit of him.
Joe, I feel like he's got it way too good to be complaining about this side that they have with McGee coming through the ranks. I think this could be a big season for Annette. Can Josh Archer come from a backup to a starting key player like he needed to be last year? Can he make that his own this year? Is he crying about that he only has a couple of jewels rather than the entire kingdom?
Oh, sure. Linfield fans always get it the worst, don't they? I mean, that's the worry for me with Ross coming back home next year. I have to listen to this more often. So, to a degree, there is definitely that like stagnation with the top three. I even think Larne have done it as well, and I do think that Linfield have stagnated a wee bit, but I don't think it maybe hurts just as much as Ross is maybe worrying about. I still think they're nailed on for top three. I don't think that's an issue at all. And as you listed there, there's some good young players coming through. It's whether or not David Healy is able to, progress them forward, which I think he absolutely will be able to.
Top three, absolutely nailed on for me. There's no doubt. I think we saw in some of the big games that David Healy can coach this team and they can rise to the occasion in the big games. The issue has been over the past few years is that they oftentimes settle for a draw in games that they should give it a go, stick the boot on the pedal and try and finish it off. I think they've dropped more points that way rather than the one-off games against the likes of a Dungannon or a Carrick where they've lost out or draw, something like that. It's more the points that they've missed out against maybe a Glentoran or Coleraine or something like that compared to the odd result against the bottom six. I like this side. Yes, there's probably you'd want to freshen up and add all these great exciting players, but I think if you took Cooper and put it in another team, you would be looking side-eyed at him thinking, oh, I'd love to have him. I think a bad season for Linfield is anything bar top two. I think expectation is to try and give this a go at the title, and a great season is obviously winning it, but is there much consternation over a second place finish? And that points difference between Larne and Linfield is at least in the single figures. Sana, pretty good.
So I don't think points difference particularly matters. If you're going to come second, you might as well come second by 1,000,000 points because you don't win anything for coming a point behind. I think we've got to give a proper tilt at it, and I'd really like us to win the league. But I think you do require a bit of a Larne mini collapse in this dynasty that they're building. I think that outside of top two is an absolute failure, but like it's in the back of my mind that we don't get Europe, which is obviously a mental place to be after we've talked about how good the squad is and all that. But just the feeling I have at the minute, it's a small chance, but it's not zero.
Predictions?
I've got a second.
So do I.
I have you third.
Wow.
Ooh.
I think for this not to be anything bar a poor season, I think Cooper is going to be key. If he stays healthy and does what he's done in previous years, I think he's the key man. He's the one you don't have an absolute replacement. You have players who can play his position, but you don't have players who can step up and have the impact that he has and can have. Perhaps that's what we're going to see, the emergence as someone that can add a bit of spice to that Cooper selection. So 1 down, 11 to go, and we haven't picked our winner yet. That would have been weird if this is the team that's going to win. Away we go. And number 2, they're back, baby. Portadown are playing top flight football once again. Niall Curry's men made a bit of a difficult season for their fans, I'd say, being in the Championship. They did eventually win out. It has to be said that Niall didn't have a great squad to begin with. He tried to fashion them together and keep them up the season before last. Didn't happen. Niall Curry did Niall Curry things, took out parts he didn't think was going to work, added lots of extra bits. It didn't always work, but they got over the line. And the thing they've done since getting promoted is that they've tried to add extra little bits to this engine, to this motor. I think they knew that the team they got promoted with wasn't going to keep them up. They've kept faith with a strong spine of it, but it's very clear what their MO on their transfer wants was get me players with experience and get me players who know how to play in this league. And broadly, they've achieved that. Some other fans will look at some of the players they brought in and have a few question marks over them. But in a team like Portadown trying to come up, you're not going to pick absolute nailed-on prospects from the top of the league. And overall, I think the additions are very good. I think that they've improved the squad significantly. But is it going to be enough? I think the aim for Portadown has got to be safety. But I see a lot of fans hyping them up for more. Is that bold to say that anything beyond not last is a possibility?
Yeah, I think it's very, as you said there, it's very similar to what they did last season. It feels like Niall is getting a lot of different types of players from all over the place, just trying to get almost experience, which when they went down into the championship and they did that, it seemed very positive. It seemed very, we're going to get a lot of players that know how to play this league, know how to get us back up, almost more strength in numbers. Whereas it feels like in the Premiership, you need more of a plan, more of a, this is a team that we've built, here's our game plan that we're going for. And I struggle to maybe see that a wee bit with the players that they bought. No, don't get me wrong, there's some good players in there. I think McCulloch being added, good replacement with Russell going. Jimmy McDonough coming in is quite an interesting one, and obviously Shane McCartan as well. So I think there's definitely good players coming in, without a doubt. It'll just be interesting to see if it works. And at the moment, I haven't quite bought into it, not the way I've seen a lot of Portadown fans.
Yeah, I feel that a touch myself. I don't think Portadown were built last year to do well against teams when they were the favourites. And you contrast how they dealt with an away trip to whoever it was, Ballymena, Dergview, whatever, and how those maybe seem like difficult games for them when they probably should have got a result, compared to this cup run that they had. I mean, last year in the Cups, they beat Carrick, Loughgall, Dungannon, Crusaders, and Glenavon. I think if you add in all those wins, that might have been safety in the league last year. And they get to the cup final, get beaten by Linfield, and then they lose out in the quarterfinals of the Irish Cup to Cliftonville. So is there a suggestion to say that actually the team that Niall built was probably more suited and will be more suited to having their backs against the wall, having to spring on the counter? You add an upgrade in the goalkeeping department, I believe, in McCarry. Much talked about, he did not have a good end of the season for Glentoran. You add in Shane McCartan, who is mercurial, I think it's fair to say. But I think Portadown have the ability to build a team around him rather than fit him in it. I think he's going to be the main man for him. That might strike some fear in Portadown fans because he has that on-off, hot and cold nature. But when he's on, he's great. I'm sure we'll see the odd set-piece goal from him. And then, look, Niall Curry's probably going to keep doing what he does. And the squad that we see now might continue to have more names added to it. Ross, you saw this team a few times due to your connection with the other man connected to Around the Grounds, Jack. Are they in a good position to take on top flight football?
They're not in a good position, but they're in an all right position. I think they'll be happy enough going into it with those signings. But there's a difference between your difficult, in quotation marks, trips last year to Dergview and Ballymena and your difficult trips to Solitude and Inver Park and the Oval, where it's just that's where you're going to separate the wheat from the chaff, because that's a proper step up when cup sets happen. But when when the Larne juggernaut comes into town and whoever's 3 points behind them and they need to win, Larne just win, and they'll win handy enough against this Portadown team coming up. I think it's a dangerous front line Portadown have got together, so maybe they're sort of looking at a thing, games where we are going to have a bit of the ball, teams around us, we're going to win them games, and then whatever happens with the top six happens, and try to get safety that way.
It's going to be about nerve in the big games, and that was somewhat a part of their downfall when they went down. They had the chances, despite how behind the 8 ball they were in that season. They got relegated against Newry and against Dungannon, and they just didn't have the business, didn't turn up. That's going to be the question. If they lose these games and come close in the games against top flight teams, when they have that crunch game in October against Dungannon, a nervy game away to Carrick where they really need to win in March, will they be able to settle themselves? Because this Portadown team, and it goes before in Al Curry's time, it's like a car, if I can keep this metaphor going, that keeps on breaking down. I know the oil's been changed and they've sorted out that part that kind of give them jip, but there's still something in you that makes you feel as though it has form for it all falling apart. And until we see that motor running good, and as I said, the cup suggests that could be the case, I'm skeptical. I really like McKinnon, and I think McKinnon beside Dougie Wilson at the back is pretty great, actually. They'll take on those high balls all day. McCullough, the other side of them, McCurry in goal. Chapman's a hard-working right back. It's what you build on beyond that. It's how many games can Thompson play? Will the goals dry up? Things like that. That's the worry. So that being said, bad season's relegated. Good season, I think, is probably anything beyond that. They could dream to go beyond relegation worries. A lot of people are backing them for that. Who's their key player and where have you got them?
Key player for me is Ryan Mays, just like last year, but I have them 12th.
Wow. First.
Yep. Sorry.
Do you agree?
The key player I have for them, Shea McCartan. And Jack, if you are listening, just skip forward 10 seconds. I have them 11th.
11th?
I'm slightly more positive. Maybe I'm wrong here. I've got them down as 9th. I think perhaps they can get on a run. Maybe a few of those goals will come from McElroy, Mays, Fife. Got plenty of goals for them last season. Maybe I think they've improved at the back, and I'm going to back McKinnon. I think if they are to do well, it's about keeping tight at the back, and he should be their man. So a few opinions there. You have them down, Ross. Joe, you've got a playoff, and I've got them. Well, actually, 9th. Yeah, 9th has them going pretty well.
What I will say, tough out of start. Very tough start.
Yeah, it is. But then that maybe sets them up to... There's two ways of looking at that, because you take on these teams, try and figure it out, and then maybe you have a run of teams where you've hit form and you've got what we're talking about, the established bottom 6. The other side of that is you get beat by everybody and then you're stressed and panicked when you've got no flow to your game at all against the teams you want to win. And I think I saw they've got all mid-Ulster derbies, bar the split that will likely happen, are happening before Christmas. Big games. Right, next one up, the Glens. Weird season for the Glens. I mean, they've went back to the drawing board. I kind of knew that as soon as Feeney was moved on. Declan Devine, he's been given the backing by Ali Poor to take this Glentoran side into the next era. And any fans of Glentoran I talk to have this zen feeling, if I can describe that. Maybe that's a poor assumption, but there isn't a huge expectation that they have to go for the title this year. This is the year. And there is a sense of, it's all going to be fine. We're going to plant some seeds in the garden of serenity that is the Oval. And we're going to nurture them. We're going to encourage them. And they're going to become big, strong redwoods that are going to take over the league in 2 seasons' time. Tell me how that's going in October when they've lost 2 games in a row and drawn against the bottom 6 side. But this is a team who's lost some of the big players. Bobby Burns is gone. Junior's gone. Others are away. Wilson at the back. So they still have strong parts of this team to bet in But the players they're bringing in, it's those wild cards that I talk about. They're players from the League of Ireland, players from England, Scotland, beyond. So it's hard to tell how they'll shape up. But could this feeling of lack of expectations help? Or is a lack of expectations and the team from East Belfast a complete fallacy? It doesn't exist.
It sounds like the Glens fans you're speaking to have been broken down to the point of delirium in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it might be more. It's we've tried. We used to get hyped up, and hype is now our enemy. Let's just enjoy youthful players developing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it has to be for them, in a sense of like, I don't think you could seriously picture them breaking into that top three this season at all. There needs to be a lot of development over the next few years. They're a while off it in my eyes. I don't know what you think, Ross.
Yeah, I think this year's a bit of a free hit for the Glens, and maybe that's where the laissez-faire attitude's coming from. I can't see them challenging, but I can't see them being quite as bad as the last few years. Look, if you told me they mount a bit of a half serious title charge until January, February time, I'd say yeah, possibly. But I can't see them carrying that the whole way. Declan Devine, hopefully he gets given a bit of time to work his magic. I don't think that was a real Declan Devine team we saw at the tail end of last season. So we'll see what he has plans for, and then I don't know. I think Glens will be happy enough for Europe this year.
It would be excellent for them. You know, they do have Sule still around, Singleton's there, McGinn's in there. I'm getting hype about this. Frankie Hiv at the back. They've got new goalkeepers. They've brought in a forward from Galway, which is pretty much a swap for Junior with them. Is Jay Donnelly going to stick around? But you have High Murphy at the back for them, 20 project. David Fisher really emerged as the main man last year, and I think they're going to rely on him this year, 22. Charlie Lindsay had a middling season for them. How much they'll rely on him, we'll have to see. But look, Johnny Russell, 20. Whiteman, 20. Leon Boyd, 18. You have Devine and a team that can be built rather than squeezed in. That's what we always say about Glentoran. They're trying to force together these players. Devine can start a wee bit from scratch and try and build a team to play the way he wants to. Because I often think about that season last year with Burns and, let's say, McCartan and others, and you felt perhaps they're trying to force it all together rather than get a real flow going. The key man's gotta be Fisher. Like, if they lose him, then it's starting, expectations will continue to fall. But you build around him and others. Patrick McLean scored a load of goals in pre-season. Maybe some of these players will work out for them. I think they're guaranteed top 6, and I don't think that should be an issue.
I'm there with you. I feel like, as you say, there's good foundations there at the Glens. It never really feels like they have a bad side. I've never really look at them and think it's not a great team this year. And I think in the same again, like it's a pretty decent side. There's good players, great individuals in there. It just is that thing of the last couple of seasons. They've started well, they've looked good, and then around December time, they just completely fall apart. And I kind of see the same thing happening again. But I have them being relatively solid in bits and pieces. So I have them in 4th.
Yeah, also got them in 4th. I think they get into Europe, be that through a cup win or through the playoffs. But you just wonder, are there some people at the Oval looking at the top 3 from last year and just thinking, have they sort of all taken a step back? Could we pounce a year early? It's almost, in the American sports style, they've almost gathered their draft picks. They've got their young talents in, and they're lying in wait for a few years' time just to see what they can do then, sort of in a fallow year now. But you never know. You get those stories where the young team can spring up a little bit earlier than thought. But yeah, 4th for me.
I've got them one place down. I've got them on 5th, just the way I've got my team set out, which is fine. I think actually 3rd to 5th will be quite close, and bar the fact that 3rd will get you into Europe. It all kind of works its way out when it comes to the European playoff. A key player for me, I think I think Dylan Connolly up from the Bows, he's going to have to produce out wide based on the players that are gone. So I expect a few more to come in. There, of course, is a situation where they're struggling to get in the top six because they're just lacking goals. But I think they've got quality in the youth, and to build around them isn't a bad idea to try and kickstart this team rather than force a rebuild instantly. I've jumped ahead already and got the team that we're talking about next, and it is Dungannon. I'm going to be direct to the point when it comes to this Swifts team. Underestimate them at your peril. They came really good at the end of last season when all of those changes that Roddy McAree made had finally bedded in. They've got tons of young talent, and week to week, I think they can get some great results. They won 5 out of 5 of their last games, and they beat Linfield, Cliftonville, and Coleraine in the league, and of course they drew with Larne. So not superstars, but we know that Dungannon unearthed these players. Really solid, super hungry, skillful. They'll hurt you on the break. They are frisky. But where does frisky get you? I think easily safe.
I think frisky gets you a bit beyond easily safe. I think they're flirting with 7th. I like them. I like them a lot this year.
As I say, that whole side of the table I'm jumping around with, but I haven't done is 8th.
I've gone very bold. I've put them as 7th.
Yeah. I think so. I think they're the best footballing team out of that bottom 6. I would like to say. Losing Joe Moore and Reece Campbell, 2 sickeners there, but John McGovern, that's not many people sniffing at that move.
Reece Campbell's a blow, but Dungannon regrouped very well, and he wasn't really a factor in that side last year. I look at the side that they played against Newry in a friendly, which they won 4-0. Dunn's in goal. I really like Glennie as a wide player at the back. Scott's on the other side. I think clearly central defence is a bit of a weakness for them. They will concede goals, but if they can keep strong, they'll hit you on the counter, because Dylan is the man that can link defence to attack. You've got Thomas Maguire. You've got McGovern up there. You've got Tomas Gavlin. You've got Andy Mitchell as well if you want to go direct. There's Niall Owens floating around. These are players that I think will be nailed on top 6 players in the years to come. They're going to embed themselves in this team, and perhaps they could be that team that plays well against the top 6 side but not get a result, and then get beat by Glenavon or Portadown and go, why is our points total not as good as our performances? But I think they could be very consistent, and it'll just be about, I think the goals will come. Maybe at the back could be their weakness.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. Playing against the top 6, they could be very good. I think they were the only team outside of the top 6 to beat us last year. That style of football that they play is lovely. It's great to watch. The young and exciting players. It's a team you want to see do well as well. I don't know if that's why we have them as high as we have them. You almost want to see that football stay up and do well. But yeah, I could see as you say, against maybe like a Portadown, they might struggle a wee bit to get the points or get over the line with them. But against the top 6, you could see them an upset every so often from them.
I think 7th would be a brilliant season. I think a poor season is that they're relegated or they're in that area. But I think compared to other teams, I think they have goals, and that will be key for them. Key player for me, I like Galvin. I think he's attracting. He scored a decent amount of goals last year, and I think he'll attract a lot of interest based on his season. Next team up, Coleraine. I mean, where do you even begin to judge this Coleraine team of what it's going to be this season? It's like a squad and a team that has like big hoardings around it, big building walls, like, full-time team work in progress. They've let go a whole wreck of players who didn't want to step up into the new era, and they've brought in loads of ones who want to be a part of it. And I know the players that we've seen before are excellent, but I make any guess about them with a lot of trepidation. Do you feel similar?
Yeah, they're a team for me to keep moving in my prediction. Although I'm reasonably confident in where I have them now, but it's been some summer for them. It's been a lot of great transfers in there, as you say, picking up those players that don't want to give in to the full time. And if it works, it could be an absolutely fantastic season for them. It's a great squad that they've put together.
There's a lot. There's a lot of betting in, like not only from on the pitch, from the team point of view, but off of it as well. Oran Kearney is gone. He's in the big stand above the goal, scratching his chin as things go along, and Dean Shields is in there. He's got a lot to prove in the dugout. And how do these players react to full time? How do they react as just a squad regardless of full time? There's a lot of things to work out, and history doesn't suggest that these kind of situations hit the ground running.
No, there's a lot of building blocks. As you say, they all fall into place. The Dean Shields one is sort of the thing that balances the whole operation for me. If he gets it together, then this is a really good Coleraine team. If it goes wrong and he's out on his ear by Christmas, it would have to go very wrong for that to happen. But then you're looking at another poor Coleraine team, more similar to last year. But I was looking; they've only lost 3 times since the takeover, which
Yes.
considering how bad their season was going, that's not to be laughed at.
Well, they were all draws, to be fair, but no, they weren't, of course. But it's growing pains how much they have an impact, and no doubt with this investment they need to get results, and I would say they don't have the same kind of aura or feeling or luxury that Glentoran have. I think there's pressure on them to get Europe for next year. That's clearly the plan in any way they can. I think from a fan's point of view, they just want to see attractive football. They just seem so down in the dumps and disappointed for a majority of that season. What the real quality that this squad has is in the forward areas. They've lost McKendry as a spark for them, but they've brought in other players like Reece Campbell. I think it's a clear 1-to-1 replacement, but we don't know how the likes of Kyle Spence is going to play as a winger up there. At the back, they brought in Cameron Stewart from Ipswich. I like Kirk McLaughlin as his third striker. And when you've got Shevlin, McGonigal and Kirk McLaughlin, who scored a decent amount in the championship and looked pretty sharp himself, and Glacken's still there, you got to say, if they can keep things tight enough at the back, which I think they should, and sort out that progression, that midfield area, which a bit of fitness should do, I think overall the goals are going to take them to third this year.
I love that McLaughlin signing. I think it's real good. The only downside for me with their dealings is the loss of Josh Carson, which obviously didn't want to go full time, fair enough. But I also have them third this year.
Oh, there we go. I must say I was swapping up and down. I think they were probably fifth at one point. They've been fourth in my rankings. But I think week to week there will be fallow moments of the season where nothing's working. But I just think, compared to some of the other teams, the goals will help them. And I think they'll enjoy the big games this year. All these full-time players, they can prepare. I think they could be quite exciting in those games against Larne, Linfield, Glentoran, and everybody else.
I'll tell you the truth. I wanted to put them second. I didn't have the nerve. So they've had to go into third. But I'm backing them for a real good season this year.
Joe, I've talked to a lot of people about this Coleraine side, and very few are as bullish as clearly myself and Ross are about their chances. Are you joining the hype club with us?
Yes, I mean, the eyebrows were raised the second you both said that, and it kind of worries me because I'm thinking about where you should put other teams. I'm wondering where you should put Cliftonville in there, but I have them fifth. I think it's a very good season for them, but I don't have them breaking into that top three.
Yeah, I think it'll be close. Like, what's a bad season for Coleraine? Is sixth and treading water just immensely frustrating, or is this season all about the process, man?
Yeah, I think that's the bad season for them. Especially if they're not competitive in that sixth as well, if it's just so clearly sixth.
Sixth is a bad season, but then if Coleraine aren't sixth, who is? You know what I mean? And obviously we will get there, but you can make a fair enough argument for Coleraine coming sixth. Like, it's not outside the realms of possibility.
Yeah, because they've got to improve so much on last year, don't they? You know,
exactly.
That's the thing. And I think they've brought in good players, but you haven't got jaw-dropping, oh my goodness, this is league-breaking kind of signing. They're trying to do it slightly in the boring and the kind of step-by-step healthy way. I like Reece Campbell, and look, it's easy to say, I think McGonigal and Shevlin, they need to perform, and if they can, and they can work together, which at times I think they did, they could get the goals to get them up to the hype of third. I think fourth's pretty good as well for them. Anything beyond 6 is progress. Where will Cliftonville go? My country for a striker, Joe. That's how I feel like Solitude is right now. The once bountiful destination for forward prowess. The striker department up at Solitude, it's been stripped back to the studs, and they've just found a good old healthy Ryan Curran floating about back there. No team wants to lose a player in Ronan Hale, who's probably best player in the league last year. Sam Ashford, very underrated, great at keeping the ball up. Ben Wilson was a pure goal scorer and looks to have started his season pretty well already in Scotland. So from there, there's not a whole load of top-end strikers sitting about this league. Are you concerned? Are you worried? Because last year, I was very down on Cliftonville, and they pulled it out of a hat, and they did all their business in August. Are we hoping, have we got our fingers crossed that that's what's going to happen for the North Belfast Reds again?
I would never be down on Cliftonville, and there definitely isn't audio footage of me being down on Cliftonville this time last season, so don't go looking for it. But no, I would say, yeah, I'm definitely worried. The I don't know, maybe it's just a bit of hopium with my red glasses on, but Curran in pre-season so far, I've been enjoying. I just worry that it's just pre-season and some of the opposition that we've been playing. No disrespect to them, of course, but transferring that into the league, I hope it can happen. The signings, like, they haven't wowed me, but they didn't last season either, to be fair. I wasn't looking at, Ben Wilson coming in and knowing he was going to do what he was going to do. Now, I'm not saying that Rory Donnelly's essentially going to come in and do the same thing, but someone like Newbury coming in from Linfield, on one hand, I understand that he's a very solid defender, but I don't know if it sort of fits that football that we play, that when you compare him to someone like Oren Casey, who loves to play football, loves to play off from the back.
Who I think you really miss in Europe.
100%, and fingers crossed he comes back, because that was a horrible injury he suffered in the Irish Cup final that we beat Linfield 3-1, just in case Ross has forgot. But hopefully he comes back from that as good as he was, if not better. Sean Stewart, Oren Casey, the seasons they had last season, if they can continue to progress, I don't think it's maybe just as much doom and gloom as it seems, and that Curran coming back the way he is could feel like a new signing.
Oh, he definitely feels like a new signing. Don't sleep on him. What a season he had the season before last. He scored plenty of goals. He missed all of last season. He comes in, and you add in Joe Gormley, who's heading towards the twilight of his career, but we saw he could stick that ball in the net still last year. It's funny. I actually tried to look back and see, does it all line up? And Curran, Gormley, Rory Donnelly, he's now with you, and then Jay Donnelly is being mooted as a player that you're trying to bring back. It's like 2018 Cliftonville all coming back together. Where's Levi Ives?
It's a big reunion party. I'll take Levi Ives back, definitely. I think, as you say, we miss Casey in Europe, and we also miss Rory massively. And I think that's a position that we need to just get a bit more depth in. Having a player like him, and I don't know if there is anyone in the league really that's as similar. I can't think off the top of my head who we would get in to replace. But then we saw what Jim did last year. He went across the water, and he brought in these players that we didn't necessarily know of, and look how well it did.
A lot of work to do in the transfer window, I think, Ross, before we can make a real assessment of what they could do this year, because I was made to look foolish last year, and I am attempting not to do the same again.
I just can't believe the crawlback that's happening here. Jim Magilton was up for the death penalty this time last year, and all of a sudden he's the best thing since sliced bread. I don't think anything happened to that Cliftonville team to deserve him getting that reputation. So I can't remember any good wins or anything. So
that wasn't for me.
I like their signings. I like Rory Donnelly as a squad player. I like Luke Conlon as a squad player. I was never too fussed on Michael Newbury, but sometimes you just need to get a fresh start and he might come good. But look at the names they've lost: Wilson, Ashford, McDonough, Hale, Chris Kearns going to be a massive miss. Nathan Gartside, a more than able deputy, he's gone as well. So I think Cliftonville are the team with the biggest gap between their ceiling and their absolute floor. I think their absolute ceiling is winning the league. I think they could string it together after a few more signings. But I think their floor, is sixth, and a poor sixth at that.
Yeah, I think that's a low floor for them. And I'm mainly basing this on the fact that actually I think you've done well for your back line to add to Casey. Really like Leopard coming from Institute. Big player, left-sided player as well. You've brought back Sean Stewart, which I think was key. Middle of the park has a few questions. I mean, if you can pull something out of the bag, add a bit of reinforcements there. There's talk of striking players that maybe Cliftonville are after. I think they could do with a McKendry style wide attacker or someone that can really run those channels just to give you something different. I know a lot of your width comes from deep and the wing backs, but sometimes if you can just find something else different, that would help. It's just the regression. Like I joke about the 2018 thing, but it can all, if Kern struggles to get back up to where he was a season and a half ago, 2 seasons ago, is this year Gormley has to not be an impact sub, play more from the start? Do Cliftonville become predictable? I think they'll be strong at the back. It's going forward is going to be the issue. And for that, based on what we have, I've give them fourth, but I do think the front line has to be addressed from somewhere, unless you've got another Sean Moore floating about.
Now, my prediction before said is thinking that we will not stop our transfer business here. We will bring in a striker and some sort of a midfielder, but I have us up in second.
Bold.
My nose is bleeding as I say that, but
I've got them at a comfortable fifth. I don't think they'll pull up any trees this year. I just think fifth.
I think fourth and fifth are pretty much the same broadly. Usually they're quite close, and at a certain point of the season you're either pushing and you're disappointed that you didn't get third, or you're kind of saying, well, we're here, drop down to fifth, fourth, whatever. That's what we've seen in previous years. But yeah, Cliftonville with work to do, but they've proven they can turn this around time and time again. Let's go to Carrick. They had an historic season last term. Best position in the league, I believe. Highest points they ever had as a club. Everything looked great. But there was a slight smudge on the glass of last season, and that was consistency. They had some games where they were blowing teams out of the water, and then other times they gave poor goals away, couldn't keep it going for the full game. And that must be the most frustrating thing for Stuart King, because he got so much juice out of the lemon that was that squad, and he could have got so much more. What this Carrick team have is winners. They have experienced players in there, and I don't want to doubt that somehow they're all going to fall off a cliff. I don't think that's the case. I've doubted them before. I will not doubt them again. That big old minibus of Glentoran old boys added a few extra seats there with McCullough as well as Clucas. They're steely, they're determined, and they have something that I don't think any other bottom six side has, and that is an absolute dynamo and the match winner. That is Danny Gibson. He's the key man, head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, he's probably the best centre forward in that bottom six, and he just scores goals. We saw that last year. But the worry for me with Carrick, second most goals conceded last year, only behind Newry, which they don't really count. So 72. What is that? 2 goals a game, ish. The underlying numbers aren't great. There's gonna be a bit of a drop off from last season. It was literally a record-breaking season. They probably won't hit those heights again. And I think most Carrick fans will be sensible enough to understand that that'll probably be the case. But I just feel something in my bones. I think there could be a bit of a slide this year. The way they ship goals and that inconsistency. It was a poor league at the bottom last year. So I just think they could easily get half dragged into a bit of a relegation scrap. Maybe pull away a bit early, but we'll possibly be talking around Christmas time. Carrick not entirely safe.
A lot of people have them as their favourites to come top of the pile in the established bottom six. In fact, a lot of people would have them as their favourites to maybe sneak into the top 6. Are you feeling bullish about them, Joe?
I'm sort of agreeing with everyone else there. I have them in 7th at the moment. Now, the one thing that does sort of worry me for them is the teams down there sort of strengthening around them. I think there maybe is a wee bit of a thing of feeling like Carrick have done a lot of work in the summer and they feel like they have strengthened their side, but they haven't like 2 signings in compared to if you look at like how many players Ballymena got or any of the other sides down around there. But I do think with how good they were last year, how solid they are as a side, and then bringing in 2 players that already do play together, I don't think that can be underestimated. So I think they'll do well again. I have them down in 7th.
And they've shown that they have an investor who is willing to back this side as well. One of their strengths last year was playing at Taylor's Avenue. Can they get used to playing on that tight, bobbly pitch? It almost seemed to go against them. They have, alongside the power, the physicality, and just the precision and attacking sense to Gibson, they still have Curtis Allen floating around in his year 36 age season. Michaelitis is there, can come out from out wide. Everyone gets excited usually when Ben Tilney gets on the ball. It's probably those central areas, both in defence and midfield. Is that the area where can they get caught for pace? Will they be a bit too excitable in the tackle? Let's just say, could that be their downfall? I like a lot about this Carrick side, and I think they've got a really good starting 11. You got to back Stuart King to keep it all going as well. I have them 8th. I just like Dungannon a bit more. Like they're not going to be worried for relegation this year, are they?
I just have a gut feeling. I think they can be half dragged into it. I've got them 9th personally. I just think they're lucky that I think there's 2 teams that are definitely poorer than them, and another that I think they'll just pip.
Well, is Ballymena one of the teams that could pip them? Can I just say, last time we did this last year, I know the Cliftonville prediction was a disaster, but I faced some questions from people. In fact, I probably got more questions from people based on my Ballymena prediction than it was my Cliftonville prediction. I said that the Sky Blues were going to finish bottom of the league, and we all know they nearly did. I don't want to wish any misery on any fan base, but I thought there was a significant amount of decline in Ballymena, and we saw it. That must have been a rough season if you follow Ballymena, especially where they've been in previous years. It was very difficult, Jim Irvin's maiden voyage in the managerial hot seat, and it's pretty clear lessons have been learnt, or everybody got together and said after that relegation playoff, never again. The fear shot through their core, and their response to that is unbuckling of the belt. We're not tightening anymore. They have went out, they have invested, they've brought in new players to try and avoid relegation, and the challenge now is to not get dragged into that bottom 2 again. And many people think that the players that they brought in will improve them significantly, and the main one being the transfer of the window so far. Ben Kennedy is playing at the Ballymena Showgrounds week in and week out next season. I did not see that coming.
No, I don't think anyone saw it coming. I know at one point we were linked with him, which is a wee bit of a mark on us, I guess, that, if we're going for a player and then Ballymena end up with him, no harm to Ballymena, obviously, but it's not great for us. But the amount of players they've brought in, and like they're pretty decent players. It's definitely like they have looked at last season and thought, yeah, no, we're not letting that happen again. We're not gonna get dragged back into this. It's just whether or not that works. I mean, the best I can see them doing, and I mean this is optimistic, is breaking out of that bottom 6 or maybe up into 7th, but I don't see it. A lot needs to click for that to happen, and a lot needs to happen around the teams around them need to almost fall apart. So I don't see them going there. I think a decent season for them is not getting dragged into that relegation battle again.
I think they're like a few teams. I'll bite your hand off for 10th. That's the feeling I've got, despite all the players they brought in. Like, they are the key benefactors of the Coleraine exodus. They've got O'Mahony, O'Donnell, big player there at the back for them, an area they needed significant improvement. Carson in midfield for them, Jarvis coming in, and you add in extra bit of beef at the back with Keelan Loughran returning. Daniel Lafferty steps up from Institute. We know the career he's had to play top flight football. Joe Moore adds a bit of extra spice as well. Despite having now Ben Kennedy, who many people would feel from a talent point of view would be the most talented player in the league, massive questions up front. It was their Achilles heel last year, and I don't know, despite having Ben Kennedy, if that's been addressed on the whole, if they've had the chance. I know there's all this talk of irons in the fire, but they haven't come out just yet. And they are potentially going to lose the transfer listed Noah Stewart, who got them out of a hole or two last year. It's hard to really tell because you can bring all these players in. All those players came from Coleraine. We talked about it last year. It wasn't a great year for Coleraine either, despite the quality that they have. Ben Kennedy's had significant issues with injuries. You know, how will he find it trying to drag Ballymena up by the bootstraps rather than being a key component of a quite exciting attack-driven team? It's a real unknown, even though I can see the board in front of me.
You look at those signings and you think there's almost a good team within just the signings. Obviously, add in Sean O'Neill in goal, but it's that lack of a striker. Are they going to try to do like a Joe Moore and Ben Kennedy sort of false nine vibe, or are they hoping Johnny McMurray has a bit of a comeback season? But I don't think you can count on either of those options. And I think if anything does let them down, it'll be the lack of goals as it was last season. I do like their business. And in a strange way, I almost feel if any of the bottom six are going to break into that top six, I think it's them. But I by no means think they're the best team in that bottom six, if that makes sense to anybody.
Yeah, like, you add in John Heron and how that's a comeback with question marks over it from a on the pitch point of view. It's just Ben Kennedy adds this wild cardness that you just don't know how it's going to play out. And I think on a one-on-one game that they have a chance to upset and shock others. But across the season, can they keep the squad together? Will they have enough to beat out other teams? I think they're going to improve on last year, and I've got them down as 10th, which might seem a bit low, but they do have a ceiling that they could reach out and excel to. But I think maybe consistency and goals could be the issue. And look, they've got a bit of defensive work to go. I think Loughran is going to help in that alongside O'Donnell, but it's not absolutely nailed on.
It's a lot of unknowns coming into the team, obviously, which is the price you pay after such a rocky season last year. I really like the Loughran signing, local boy as well. So, cliche as it is, you probably give that a little bit more. I'm backing them for 8th. I fancy them to go on a bit of a charge.
Yeah, I have them down as 9th personally. As you mentioned, that lack of a striker or a consistent goal scorer is one thing that's just sort of put me off slightly. But I think I think if things do click for them, they've got enough quality there that they could maybe jump up to 9th.
Yeah, like you stick Nathaniel Ferris or maybe a Curtis Allen or something, you kind of feel more confident. Not they're exactly the same player, but you add in someone else, Andy Mitchell or something, you kind of go, okay, there's something to go here, because you cannot rely just on one player for the entire year as well. You need a squad, and perhaps that's one area that they could do with a bit more improvement. So yes, here we are. They've come out. Larne, they're just a stat machine. 21 goals conceded last year. Amazing. 2 games lost all year in the league. It's their Gibson Cup to lose. Europe has somewhat put a dampener on the start to this season so far, of course, and everyone will fear them. Despite the poor parts of their campaign in Europe, there was also elements where I thought, you look great. I wonder, will they keep their formation? Because at times I thought it looked more like a 3-4-3. Where does McHenry fit into this? We talked about Lee Bonus potentially going away to Holland. I think he probably should go there because, what else has he got to prove in this league at the age he is and where he wants to take his career? I'm sure that'll be disappointment for Larne fans, but they reload, don't they, Larne? Menacing going into this year.
Yeah, 100%. Should all three of us just say first, then we'll move on from them because it feels like it's just going to happen again.
Hold on. Let me just check my notes. Yep, first for me.
Yeah, I think they maybe haven't done as much business as I maybe would have expected. Although McKendry, I think, is an absolutely fantastic signing. He's someone I wanted down at Cliftonville, so I think that's a great signing. Some of the ones that has moved on, Rashawn Williams, he never fully convinced me last year, but he was solid. He really did help in that second half of the season. So as we said at the start of the podcast, I feel like the top three have kind of stagnated a wee bit. And I don't know if that just means that Larne, for me, it feels like Larne are just going to probably just do the same again. Linfield or Cliftonville or any of the other teams don't really feel like they've done enough to knock them off that perch. I could kind of see the same thing happening again, though, they retain, and it kind of depends what happens with Europe now.
Ain't broke, don't fix it, Ross.
Well, I just want to know what you think. Is winning the league almost par for the course now, and they sort of need to get a bit of a double or a treble to sort of progress into one of the great Irish League teams, or do you reckon they're already there?
Irish Cup's key, isn't it? Despite all this dominance and the ascension towards the best side in the country, the Irish Cup has eluded them. It was a dismantling, or at least it was an excellent managerial job, big game management job from Cliftonville to take them down at Windsor. They are no doubt flag track bullies, and which is an important quality, I think, to get to the title. They don't lose big games either. I just think League Cup didn't have a sniff, and same for the Irish Cup. I mean, the Continental Shield is great and all, but I think Irish Cup, they haven't won it before, so that has to drive them forward, surely.
I think they've got to do it if they want to be classed as one of the top sides in Irish League history. 3 league titles in a row is one way to do that, but there will always be those question marks over, well, you still haven't won the Irish Cup and you're claiming to be this big team. On the McKendry signing, I like it, but I don't know if I like it for Larne. I just don't quite understand where he fits in to that team. I don't think he really matches their style. Obviously, he's had a go there before and he was deemed surplus to requirements, but I'm sure Tiernan has a plan. He always does. So I'm sure he'll fit in somewhere and have a good season, prove me wrong, but it confuses me a little bit, that signing.
I suggested this last season, that didn't come to fruition at all. Like, we're talking about bad seasons. I think not winning the league for Larne is that, and if that's to happen, they're going to have to drop a lot of points, and the way that would happen is that they start losing those big games. They get caught out the odd time against bottom 6 sides, and perhaps in those big games they get found out in the sense that we all know it's 3 at the back, 2 up top, trying to run into the channels, hassle them out wide. We talked about how Cliftonville got a real blueprint to take them down. Do they change it? And maybe some of the personnel, do they change things up? Like in Europe, I felt as though they had that back 3, and then it became a bit of a 4 with Levi Ives on one side, Cosgrove pulling back, and then maybe a winger on one side, Graham coming on that other side, 2 centre players, and then you have a front 3 of Ryan, McKendry out wide, and Lusty out wide. I think Lusty could have a big season for them. I know he had a really pretty great campaign up until the injury with Dungannon mid-season. He looks to have come back sharper, fitter, and we all know Paul O'Neill, will he be about? I think Lusty will play a pretty significant role for this Larne team. Might not start week in or week out, but I think we could. There's a situation where we're sitting here in November going, my goodness, Lusty started X amount of games and is key to that wide attacking berth. Maybe that's just setting up for Europe. Load of nonsense. They'll have 5-3-2 once again. But what I think McKendry offers them is you can swap it up and go 3 at the front, or he's just there to work in the channels.
He provides something different if things aren't going right. And I think as a fan of McKendry, I think what you don't want to see is him stuck back at wing back.
That's a worry.
Especially when Larne have 2 really good wing backs anyway.
They've almost 3 as well with Graham. We don't know if Glenn's going to go. He's a solid backup. So favourites, prove us right, prove us wrong, Larne. But there's a feeling of a team that even if they fall backwards a touch, I think they'll still look pretty strong. A couple to go here. We have actually just comparison. I talked about the difference between the Linfield team a couple of years ago and Linfield now. Not that you have to change your squad to change it up, but you can see the Larne progression in that same year that Linfield lost to RFS. Larne had a pretty poor European campaign themselves against St. Joseph's, was it? And we have Rowan Ferguson in goals. Cosgrove's there, Bulger's there, but you had Kofi Bammer, gone. Ben Doherty, gone. Jeff Hughes, retired. Mark Randall's come into the side a bit more towards the end of last year, and maybe this year again. Leroy Miller was there, Shea Gordon's gone, Danny Kern's gone, and then Lee Bonus looks as though he is potentially going elsewhere. So they've refreshed, and by Jove have they refreshed with quality. A team that could do with refreshing with quality. How do you solve a problem like rebuilding the Crews? A lot of upheaval. We knew for a long time that the Crews were going to change management. It's never going to be an easy process after all the decades that Baxter was in charge, but he leaves a side that has been around the block a number of times, and that has plenty of positives, but it's a team that people were saying they're going to have to try and reset for the future sooner rather than later, and this year might be the year, potentially. And I think overall, not many people are looking at the Crews thinking they're in a better position than last year, because they've lost Heatley and a lot of their key players are another year older.
Losing Heatley is obviously massive, but that losing Baxter, when you have someone who's been there so long, it's like an integral part of a club. We see it at so many other clubs. If a manager leaves after being there for so long, it's a really difficult next season. A lot of things need to go right, and I'm not entirely sure it will. I mean, where I have them, I don't think Crusaders fans would be overly disappointed with, if I'm entirely honest with you.
I think, yeah, there is going to be a serious drop off. Baxter, over 1,000 games of experience, Heatley, nearly 500 games of experience. That's a lot to lose in one fell swoop, especially coming off the back of a poor enough season when, a lot of people were tipping the Crews to maybe be a bit of a dark horse last year. Obviously never came to fruition. Don't know if they got their business right in the transfer market. There's a few strange signings just came in, but there's a bit of a job on Declan Cadell's hands, and there's another point: the man's never managed before, so technically he still hasn't, because Baxter was there for Europe, hasn't managed competitively. But I feel like we've said it for a lot of teams. It's a lot of unknowns for Crusaders this year.
There'll be goodwill, I think, from fans at Seaview. I think they'll be willing him on. He is a club legend. He was there during the glory years. Just such a club man, and he will no doubt have a bit of growing pains, settling in pains, and yeah, I think the past few transfer windows haven't been sparkling for the Crews, but I think they've done such good business in previous years that it sets them up on decent footing. Is that starting to fade away? Like we're joking about Cliftonville 2018, like I think a lot of the side was probably there 5-6 years ago, and I don't know if you would say rip them out of the team, because they've still got a lot to offer, with Burns and Laurie and even Lecky, and we can still see what Owens can do as this sledgehammer to throw on late. But there's big players that need replace, and on top of that, they could probably do with a few more fresh bodies for the future to bet in this season.
Do you know what? That point about him not having managerial experience before could go one of two ways, because coming into a team that has had the same manager for so long and a club that is so used to the way he works, if you're an experienced manager with set ways of working, that could be when you really start to bump heads with people. He could be coming in more flexible, more willing to sort of adapt to the way things are. He's used to the way things are already. He's been there. So maybe he could surprise us a wee bit. Maybe he picks it up quicker than we'd expect, but then that could go again one of two ways. Maybe he does need his own style. Maybe it's time for Crusaders to refresh things a wee tiny bit.
The first three halves of Europe does not instill confidence in you that this is going to go well from a squad point of view, but then you see what they did in that 45-minute spell. They are a barn-burning side when they want to be, and we all know how much Seaview plays into how they set up, and I've always been diligent and hard to beat in those top 6 one-on-one encounters. I like Offord coming in. I thought he shone at times in Europe. I think since January, Nixon has come out as a very apt wide player for them. What way do they build Lecky into the squad with those other players? Jordan Stewart is a one-for-one replacement of Healy from being diminutive, head down, runner, can be tricky on the ball. Not exactly the same type of goal scorer as Heatley, but as a bet to say, if we can get you going, if we can nurture you, if we encourage you, if we can get you to your best, you know that Jordan Stewart can still drag your team from one end of the pitch to the other and get that ball in the back of the net. It's just more what they do at the back. They lose again Josh Robinson there, and they've had to try and play a variety of players at that back line last season. It was an area they probably need bodies outside of getting players back from injury. Will some players that they're going for, the likes of Barr, will they find it tough to play to the top end standard that the Crews will need? The one thing that's in my head right now is if someone said, would you bet money that they'll fall no lower than 6th? I don't think I could take that bet. I still think they will finish in the top 6, but I wouldn't stake a lot of money on that being absolutely nailed on. We're talking about floors. I don't think 6th is a floor for the Crews this season.
I could see them dropping out of it if it weren't for the fact that I can't pick a team to replace them.
I agree.
It's just that I think they're maybe lucky to be on this fallow year when the bottom 6 just maybe isn't fully in a position. And I know I'm contradicting myself with what I've said before, but I think they're safe in that regard. I've got them down as 6th. I think Declan Cadell obviously has tenure for what he's done with that club. I think he'll get the full season probably next season and just sort of have to start rebuilding from there. Jordan Stewart, that's a great signing. I wouldn't have got rid of him personally. I know he hasn't played a lot over the last few years just for injury, but what a player on his day.
I've got 6th. What have you got, Joe?
Yeah, I also have 6th.
There you go. Agreement. How much of a loss is Ben Kennedy? He was in and out of the squad last year. We don't know how, like that was a very quick deal to be shipped off to Ballymena. Clearly the relationship had broken down between him and the club, or at least they didn't feel as though they were going in a conjoined push forward. Their journeys did not align, so they did go without him for time. Will it be a big blow? I think it will be in some moments, but I think it was probably something they had to move on, a player they had to move on from anyway, just from a either cashing in or just a squad building point of view.
Yeah, look, he's obviously something's happened with him when Baxter was managing. Clearly, as you say, the relationship isn't there. He never really played his best football, certainly over the last season or so. I think it's maybe a bit of a mutually beneficial agreement just to sort of get rid of him. And, he might go and perform well at Ballymena, but the fact that he's, once again, no disrespect to Ballymena, but the fact that he's dropped the Ballymena maybe tells a bit of a tale.
Last 2 teams in my bowl. I'll let you guys pick. Do you want to start with Glenavon or Loughgall first?
Sure, we'll go with Glenavon.
Okay. A team who themselves go into this year trying to pick themselves up, shaking off the change of manager in Hamilton wasn't super swift. They needed a bounce back, there's no doubt, and they definitely got that with McDonald, but they did fall off quite poorly towards the end of last season, and they have brought players in to try and change that. And the big question will be, can they get this team to play the way that McDonald wants? Because he wants them to work in a certain way. Players moved on, others have come in. Is it all going to work together? Because I think a lot of people are predicting that they will be fighting for survival on this occasion in the upcoming season.
McDonald could really start feeling the pressure if it starts wrong this season, and then you're starting to look at the same as last season. Did they get rid of him? Are they bringing someone else in? And then it's the same sort of story. It's kind of similar to what we've seen at the Glens the last couple of years of, at a certain time of the season, the manager moves on and the team just sort of stay as they are. And it kind of feels like that could potentially happen for Glenavon again. I don't see them getting out of the bottom six. I can't see that happening. I think the signings that they've made are relatively decent. I think Port's being back in the league, certainly for the fans, is going to spur them on. I don't know how much that matters for the players these days. They're a team I'm struggling with my prediction, because I can see them safe and I can see them automatically going down. So I really am struggling with them.
Goals is something they struggled with massively, Ross, especially from a personnel point of view. Oftentimes it was all up to the young Prendergast to try and get them out of a situation. To try and remedy that, they've brought in the highly experienced Davy McDade, and they've also given a flyer to Michael O'Connor, who is looking to come back, capitalise on all that promise people have believed that he has. But that isn't a sure thing either. Do you believe this could be the remedy that they've been looking for?
I'm not quite sure, because when's the last time Davy McDade really played, never mind scored on a consistent basis? For sure knows where the back of the net is, but I haven't seen it consistently in a while. I like Michael O'Connor. He scored goals for Dungannon a few seasons back, kept them up in the playoff, but I have no idea how he got on in Sweden. I would be surprised if anybody does. I do like Reece Marshall. I got that one sorted real early.
You're talking about health concerns. That was a big issue last year. Yeah, you've got to say, from a Irish League CV, from an eye test point of view, love it. Great signing for a bottom six side. It's getting on the pitch is going to be their difficulty.
Yeah, it's all well and good having him, but he's got to be making a difference for them, and to do that, he's got to stay relatively fit and fresh. And that's obviously the big question mark around them. Barney McCune, decent signing as well at the back, but as we're talking about that's not the problem at the minute. They just need another striker, proven goal scorer in there. And I didn't mind Lido Latefa last year. He was in fits and starts, but he scored a few goals. I remember him getting a hat trick in a big game at one point. He would have been another.
I think it might have been the only goals he scored.
It could well have been. But that just sticks in my head. He's passing the eye test for that reason alone. But I think Glenavon flattered to deceive a little bit, flew under the radar because Ballymena and Uri were so bad. And I could well see them getting sucked down into that again.
Change at board level for Glenavon, passing of the torch. They've started this era. They've touched up the badge. They feel like this is a turnaround for them. But compared to previous seasons, I think expectations from Glenavon fans have been halted ever so slightly. And it's probably closer until they see this team ripping through teams, getting points on the board. I think there'll be a feeling of trepidation around Mourneview Park.
Yeah, I think expectations will have been lowered to a suitable level this year. There'll be no shocks if they are down around 10th, 11th. I don't think it's been this bad at Moorview for 10, 15 years odd around then. Certainly in the relatively short time that I've been following Irish League closely, I can never remember a Glenavon team sort of struggling in the way they have. So this is obviously a bit different, but I think over the last few years, yeah, expectations have settled down to where we're at the minute.
If you were a Glenavon fan, Joe, would you be slightly nervous going into this season?
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely say so. With the way last season went at times, and just with the teams around, I wouldn't be confident going in at all. I think if you were a Glenavon fan, your absolute ceiling would be maybe getting a wee bit of a cup run going potentially, but I'm not even so sure on that, to be honest.
It's just so tight. That's the key thing. Somebody has to finish 12th, somebody has to finish 11th, and it will all come down to one-on-one games. It's going to be Glenavon versus Portadown, Loughgall versus Ballymena, and those games against Dungannon and Carrick. It could all be tight, or if you don't get the right results, it can be a massive turnaround. Everything almost feels like a 6-pointer, and to bring actually Loughgall into this, It's on everybody's lips. It's on everybody's mind. Second season syndrome. Will they suffer from it? What are the key factors that we could diagnose this? Usually it would be all the big players that got you there going away. Well, that hasn't happened because they've pretty much kept everybody. And Benji McGee is still there as of time of recording, and there's no chat right now that he's going anytime soon. But of course, the deadline looms. They have added extra players that make them better. I think Gartside makes them better in goals. I think McDermott adds a bit more to their wide backs. And they also are building for the future in the sense that they bring in a player that I really liked last year in Lewis Francis. Scored like 10 goals for Bangor, 20 years old, absolute unit, big player. Connor Kerr played for Glenavon a bit last year. That adds to your depth. Conor McCloskey, another experienced player. He gives you a bit more up top. I don't think they can repeat what they did last year, but I don't see some sort of fall away that we've seen with Portadown a couple of years ago and maybe Newry last year. I think they've added bodies and consistency was a problem for them as well. Goals didn't seem to be. But will players know and teams and managers know what they're up against now next season and will not take them lightly as they probably did last year?
Yeah, I would say a lot of their signing, it's been a nice mix of signings in terms of experience and then also, as you say, a bit of youth and a bit of excitement almost. That championship last year was absolutely brilliant and Bangor were a great side. So getting players like Francis and stuff up in the league, it's great for the league to see a player like him in it, as well as I think he could be really good for them. McDermott was, great when he went to Bangor as well in the second half of last season. And then, as you say, the more experience with McCloskey. So it's an interesting window. I do just think there will be that, as you mentioned, the second season syndrome of panic a wee tiny bit if it doesn't start well. They need to get off to a good start, or else it's a wee bit of, oh dear, is this going to happen? And I hope it doesn't. They were brilliant last season for coming up. I thought they were excellent. They were really good to watch. Great atmosphere when you went down. So I'm hoping to stay up. But look, this bottom three that I have, I can keep seeing these last three teams could go anywhere really in it. So I'm not entirely sure.
For you, Ross, do you believe that they can keep going here? Like, injuries could be key for Loughgall because they haven't got a massive squad that has the quality that their starting 11 has. I like different players in there, but let's say Daniel Ferris gets crocked. What about someone like Tiernan Kelly? Do they have the players that can step up for 4 or 5 weeks when they're maybe not playing or suspension? It's a squad thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a real squad game. But what I do like is getting that bit of depth in goal. Turker, decent keeper, but I think maybe more of a championship keeper. Good games, don't get me wrong, but he had a mistake in him. I think that's fair to say. But the big key for me for Loughgall is keeping Lakeview Park as a bit of a fortress as it was at the start of last season. I know we really went up there and struggled. I think they went on a bit of a run where they held a few good teams, the draws. I think that's
beat Larne.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. I think that's crucial. It's a lovely ground as well. I'd hate to see it go, but I've got a bit of a mid-Ulster trio bringing up the foot of the table with Loughgall 10th, Glenavon 11th, and Portadown 12th.
Yeah, I don't think Loughgall are going to fall away massively. I just think other teams around them have improved and perhaps will be a bit more ready for them when they come. And with that, I think it will be another season. To pat myself in the back again, I did say that Loughgall, well, they said they were going to be as good as they were, but I did back them to have a pretty good season, and last year was unbelievable. They were one of the most exciting teams to watch in the league. I do think there'll be regression from a table point of view. Anybody that's been keeping score, these two sides are my bottom two. Loughgall, I think it's all about safety. Glenavon, I think it's all about safety. Anything beyond that is great. Bad season is it's obviously relegation. it's funny because I don't think anybody would take 11th, but in some situations, halfway through the season, you're begging for it. I'll start. Loughgall 11th and Glenavon are my 12th team.
I'm with you there with Glenavon. I have Glenavon down in 12th. However, I do have Loughgall just pipping Portadown and finishing up in 10th.
I can absolutely see your reasonings for Glenavon in 12th, but I think if anything we've said on this podcast that we're looking back on, I think it could be Glenavon giving us egg on our faces. I think they could end up being comfortable, but equally they could end up being absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I kind of get that feeling. At no team I'm sticking at 12th do I feel like, yeah, anyone I put there, I think, you know, I don't know. This could look pretty bad. Ross, predictions then with those two, where are they finishing?
Loughgall 10th and Glenavon in 11th, but I think very early prediction, two teams go down this year.
Wow, I think I'll get round to it in one of the future podcasts, but interesting championship season this year. Bangor look like this is their year. They're ready to go.
Yeah, 100%. They were very unlucky last year to be pipped to a playoff in the last 5 minutes of the season. So they'll be ready to go. Institute no mugs again. Exciting season down there.
Well, there's the predictions locked in. I think to review our tables, I had from the bottom to the top, Glenavon 12th, followed by Loughgall, Ballymena 10th, Portadown 9th. I feel bad even just reading this out. Carrick in 8th, Dungannon sneaks 7th, Cruise in 6th, Glentoran 5th, Cliftonville 4th, Coleraine 3rd, Linfield 2nd, Larne 1st.
For me, I had Glenavon at the bottom, then Portadown, then Loughgall, and then Ballymena, Dungannon, Carrick, and then into the top 6, Crusaders, Coleraine, Glens, Linfield, and then if we end up having a shocking season, I will be burning this bit of paper, but Cliftonville 2nd and Larne top.
I went Ports and Glenavon both to go down. Loughgall, Carrick, Ballymena, you can swap them through whatever way you want. Dungannon 7th, Cruise 6th, Cliftonville 5th, Glentoran and Coleraine 4th and 3rd, then Larne just to beat Linfield to the title.
There's our predictions locked in to be cracked open again, probably throughout the season, but we will reconvene with these come the end of the campaign. All we've got to do now is look ahead to the first game of the season and get our game predictions down. Okay, we're kicking the season off. Can't believe I'm back doing this once again. It feels real all of a sudden when I'm doing the preview for the game week ahead. There's no Larne against Loughgall because they are playing in Europe. Well, Larne are playing in Europe, of course. But Friday night TV game, Glentoran against Crusaders. It's at the Oval. Two teams that we kind of can't predict how they're going to set out. I think that says to me that it will be a 1-1 draw. Both teams that kind of don't have a full flow together and therefore perhaps aren't gunning from the get-go.
Just with the way Glentoran tend to start their seasons, I'm going to say they're going to win it. And I think it'll be comfortable enough. I'm going to say 3-1.
A win for either side would have their fans buzzing. Yeah. Absolutely buzzing. It would really set them up strong.
I fancy a draw, high scoring draw. I think Glens Cruise is one of my favourite fixtures as a neutral. I just think it always lives up to the hype. First day of the season's a little bit different, obviously, but I think a draw, and as you say, any winner here could really kick on from there.
Linfield go down to the Ballymena Showgrounds. Linfield actually have a pretty nice start to the season in regards to what has been the established bottom 6 in this league. They go to Ballymena, this rejuvenated Ballymena. I'm sure they would want to kick their season off with a mega shock. I can't see it happening. I think this will be 2-0 to Linfield, maybe 2-1 with a late goal for Ballymena, but I think Linfield will happily take their time, pass it around very well, and might take them a while, but I think they'll get the goals to win out here.
Yeah, I agree. It'll have to be a patient performance, win by the odd goal. I think before we started this, I was very nervous, but now that we've talked through Ballymena and you have to actually play games of football and not just name a team, I think we'll be all right there. But a narrow enough win, I will go 1-0.
I may be feeling a bit more confident for you, so I think it'll be comfortable and quite a good start for Linfield. So I'm going to go 4-0.
One of these metaphorical 6-pointers to kick off the season. Carrick against Glenavon at Taylor's Avenue. I think I saw a stat there that Glenavon haven't won their first game of the season in like forever. I think it was Warren Point back in pre-COVID times. And Carrick are tough opposition. As I said before, Taylor's Avenue doesn't always set it up well for Carrick, but I think they'll get off quite well. Are we braced for Danny Gibson here? Would go down very nicely. 2-0 for Carrick, and I'll feel bad that I didn't captain him in my fantasy team.
This is maybe the one I see as a draw on the opening day. I'm gonna go for a decent score on one though, 2-2.
Yep, I back Carrick with this one by a couple of goals ago. I want to say 4-2. It feels like there's always one mad game on the first day of the season.
100%. There's going to be some whopper of a goal somewhere. Can it be Dungannon at home at Stagmore Park? I think Coleraine would have preferred to, I guess I really want to start off at home, but would have preferred to start this new era at home. But they go down to a tight little game there at Stagmore Park. And I actually think, as much as I'm a part of the hyping up third place club, I think this might be 2-1 Dungannon. Late goal, get the early one, Coleraine fight back, and then there's my favourite little Tomas Galvin nipping up. Injury time, minute winner, and there's your shock on the first big Saturday. Do you agree?
I do agree, because we saw the scalp Dungannon took on the opening day last year when they came back from nowhere to draw Larne. So, yeah, I think a draw is fair enough. I can't see them winning, but I think a draw, 1-1.
Yeah, I'm going to be boring, unfortunately, and agree with you, Ross. Although I could see it being a scoreless draw, 0-0.
Boo, boo. I don't think it will be the situation when we go to Sunday. I kind of feel like I'm going to enjoy my football just across all 3 days. Cliftonville take on Portadown at Solitude. Ports fans maybe feel like good time to play. Cliftonville away from home, first day of the season, don't have their full armoury that they may have had last season. I think Ports might play well for the first 20 minutes and then everybody gets a bit excited. And then Cliftonville score. I think this will be a 3-1 encounter in the end. Maybe Portadown getting a penalty later on and giving them fans something to cheer for. But I think Cliftonville will eventually go through the gears and show the top flight experience that they have.
Yeah, I think this will be... I mean, Portadown fans travelled excellently in the Championship. I think they'll do it even better again this season in the top flight. So I think it's going to be a really good atmosphere to start. Probably something similar to what you say, sort of first 20, 25 minutes until there's a goal. But I see us just sort of prevailing in that one. I'm going to say 2-0.
Yeah, if any Ports fans don't want the oddly specific omen, the last time Portadown played their first game on a Sunday, they got beat 4-0 by Linfield, and I think that will happen again. So 4-0 Cliftonville.
But who will score? Where are the strikers? Does it go 4-0? Yeah, no, it'll be a potential bump crashing down to earth in reality of top flight football or a great start. But yeah, I think Cliftonville, they usually do well against the Ports at Solitude. So I'm backing them. Boys, we're done. Big bumper episode, but one that everybody loves. You give predictions for games, for teams. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Now you've got to commit that you're going to put your prediction game on the line every week. I'm enticing you, listener, and you boys in front of me here to join the NIFL fantasy game. I missed out in the top 10 last year. I've learnt my lessons. I'm going to come back strong this year. The Kicking Mat Dreamers, they're going to go for the title this year. There's prizes now. There's like season tickets. There's some vouchers for a sports retailer that you can grab. I think a season ticket might be on the line if you win out. But mainly, it's pride. I want to look at the table and see that I'm beating you both. Have you got your team in yet? Or do I have to coerce you into picking a team?
I'm still very much at the stage where everybody's picture's pinned up on my wall with string connecting them. So still a little bit of work to do, but don't worry. Harlan Wolf Welshers will be near the top of the league.
If the team name's that good, I'm gonna have to get thinking. But no, team hasn't been.
You have to win with a name like
You
that.
do have to win. Team hasn't been picked yet, but I'll certainly have to start get thinking.
There you go. They're committed. They'll be in the league. Listener, you can pit yourself and beat the Harland Wolf Welshes. That's your aim. That's your game. Go online, pick a team through the NIFL Fantasy Football game, and if you go to my Twitter account, have a hoke. I will be posting up the links so you can join the Listener League so that you can enjoy seeing me predict a better team. But look, that's just the way it goes. Fellas, get the plugs in. Massive episode. Where can people find you on this great thing that we call the internet?
So as a collective, at Around the Grounds NI on Instagram and TikTok, and AT Grounds NI on Twitter, just for absolute nonsense. A lot of people getting upset by our tweets lately. I'm just giving our opinion. Apologies. And then I am Ross Welsh 8 on everything.
I am Joseph_McCallion on the artist formerly known as Twitter X, and on Instagram I'm Joseph_McCallion 24.
Tremendous. Gents, been a pleasure. I can feel the hype. I can feel the excitement. And no doubt I will have you on plenty of times between now and your final reckoning. That is the season review podcast. It's back, baby. Let's go.
No more shopping.
Well, I'm still doing the thing after the pod, am I not? Hello if you're new here. Hello if you're not and you're a veteran of these things. You know how this will go. You're thinking, what a great podcast that was. I really enjoyed it. I must engage with the podcast when it's not in recorded form, or I want to find out more up-to-date things compared to this whole recorded format. And good for you. You are in luck, because as you probably used this little avenue to find your way to this podcast, I'm on social media because it's 2024. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All you gotta do is go for Kicking Match, all one word. It's the same. I've got it on lockdown. For some reason, nobody wanted to call anything Kicking Match before 2022. I got them all. I'm a happy boy. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. As always, it feels really weird to be here for a third season. First one's fun. Second one's like, I need to try and do that again, but like, good. Third one's like, okay, well, this must have legs, I guess. And I'm glad to be here for another season. Gonna be strange being in front of this microphone again for X amount of weeks straight. Don't want to talk about it. Probably a bit scary, but I'll be with you here on the journey. At least I hope so. You know the score. We'll be here every week, aiming to go for the Tuesday night kind of window to put things out there. So, thanks for listening. Hopefully you'll come back another time. Until then, I will see you and chat to you next week.